There was a time when Vinicius Jr was the most feared player in Europe.
Atención con Vinicius. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Impresionante! Vinicius Jr.
You don't have to go far back. Just look at last season.
El trazo al frente para Vinicius. ¡Qué balón! ¡Qué balón!
With 25 goals and 12 assists, he was the offensive heart of Real Madrid. Injuries didn't matter, breaks didn't matter, controversies didn't matter. Vinicius always showed up in the big games. In the Spanish Super Cup final, he humiliated Barcelona with an unforgettable hat-trick. In the second Clásico of the league, he did it again.
Escora la carrera, va con la pierna derecha, se frena, gol!
A goal, an assist, and the final blow to their eternal rival in the title race. And in the Champions League, he crowned Madrid's European run with a goal in the final against Borussia Dortmund to lift yet another trophy.
Vinicius, 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 goal! Goal! Goal!
But all of that feels far away now. This season, something broke. Vinicius doesn't shine like he used to. It's not that his stats have collapsed. He's still scoring, still assisting, but his impact on the game is completely different. He's no longer that electric, unstoppable force who would tear down defenders with a mix of rage and skill. Now he seems held back, confused, even frustrated. Where is the fearless player who used to take on anyone? What happened to the Vini who danced in spite of the boos? Some blame Ancelotti's system, others blame Mbappe's arrival, which pushed him out of his comfort zone, but some point to something deeper, a psychological crisis. Vinicius, who once felt unstoppable, has become predictable, and when a player like him stops playing with confidence, he loses almost everything. Is this just a temporary dip in form, or is this the beginning of a silent decline? What's clear is that Madrid needs the best version of Vinicius to compete at the highest level, and this season, that Vinicius just hasn't been there. Vinicius Jr wasn't always the superstar who amazed the world. His story is one of a player forged through criticism, doubt, and rejection. When he arrived in Madrid, many pointed fingers at him for missing easy goals, making poor decisions, and not being ready for elite football. But despite all that, Vinicius evolved. He became stronger, more precise, more lethal. He earned his spot in the starting 11 through hard work. Starting in the 2021 to the 2022 season, he became a true difference maker on the pitch. And by the 2023 to 2024 season, he was the main figure in Real Madrid's attack. That's when he broke the mold. Vinicius became a global star, and his rise wasn't just personal, it was collective. In Bellingham, he found the perfect partner. Their connection transformed Real Madrid's attack. Jude would arrive with power and intelligence from deep. Vini would open up defences with impossible dribbles. Together, they gave Madrid unpredictable options, pure dynamite on every counter-attack. Vinicius once again became that decisive player, capable of winning matches on his own, of leaving defenders on the ground with a single move, of changing games with one spark. His football shone again with unstoppable force. But not everything has been magical over the years, because along with that undeniable talent, his most controversial side also grew. Vinicius has never been a neutral player. He sparks passion and hatred. He clashes with opponents, challenges the crowd, argues with referees. His on-field attitude, often emotional and intense, creates rejection, even from those who admire his skill. And as often happens in this sport, when you mix arrogance, talent, and the Real Madrid shirt, the boos come quickly, and racist insults became more and more common whenever Vinicius played in Spanish stadiums. Vinicius is a brilliant player, yes, but he is also a symbol of an era where football is mixed with intense emotions, racial tensions, provocation, and open wounds. Alongside his evolution as a player, Vinicius also gained a reputation as a provocateur. And we're not talking about just a few gestures, we're talking about a pattern of behaviour that for many turned him from a hero into a villain. It all started to change in last season's Champions League semi-final against Bayern Munich. Joshua Kimmich was about to hand him the ball for a throw-in, just a simple gesture, but Vinicius refused to take it. Once, twice, 3 times. And with that small act of disrespect, the Brazilian lit the match on fire. It was an unnecessary, unsporting move that enraged rivals, fans, and analysts alike. And since then, that kind of behaviour hasn't stopped. Against Mallorca, Vinicius was at the centre of the storm. He argued with half the opposing team, responded to every foul with insults, and provoked each defender like it was a personal war. The match turned into a battle, and he was the one fueling it. His clashes with Gavi have already become a modern classic. Vinicius versus Gavi, 2 young stars full of pride and emotion, but with tempers that are hard to control. There's no Clásico without a clash, a push, or some provocation between them. The same goes for his matchups with Coque, Atletico's captain, with whom he's had multiple on-field arguments. These aren't isolated incidents anymore, they're constant. And as if that wasn't enough, his red card against Valencia for striking the opposing goalkeeper was yet another sign that something is off. Was the red card fair? That's up for debate. But what isn't in question is how Vinicius lets himself get dragged into provocation, how he loses control. It happened again in the Madrid derby in the Champions League. More gestures toward Atletico fans, more tension, more loss of focus. And if we needed one final example of his frustration, it was there in the King's Cup final. From the bench, Vinicius shouted, insulted, and furiously complained to the referee as he watched Barca lift the trophy. His face, angry, hurt, powerless, completed the picture. This is the Vinicius who no longer enjoys the game. He fights it, but beyond all the controversy, beyond the gestures, the fights and the complaints, Vinny has always answered with football. His stats are undeniable. Since the 2021 to 2022 season, he hasn't scored fewer than 20 goals in a single year. That season he scored 22 and gave 17 assists. In 2022/23, he improved, 23 goals, 19 assists. Last season, once again, he was decisive. 25 goals and 12 assists. And this year, even with the storm around him, he already has 20 goals and 14 assists. In other words, even in his worst moments, Vinicius still produces over 35 goals per season. How many players in the world can say the same? So the question hurts. Why get into fights with the crowd, with opponents, with referees, if he already has everything it takes to become a legend? The peak of this contradiction came when Vinicius himself broke down in tears during a press conference with the Brazilian national team, denouncing the racist insults he's received in Spain and accusing La Liga of doing little to stop them.
Eu só queria jogar futebol, só quero fazer de tudo pelo meu clube e pela minha família.
And it's true, racism in football is a cancer that must be fought with everything. But in his case, many asked if he always responds with provocative gestures toward the crowd, if he often provokes the insults. Why take on the role of the victim? What did he expect? That fans and rivals would simply ignore it all? That there would never be any backlash to his actions? And maybe the answer is more human than it seems, because Vinicius may look strong, brave, defiant, but he's also a young man, alone under the biggest pressure in the world. And when you treat every match like a war, one day, inevitably, it takes its toll. But the real problem isn't the colour of his skin, it's his attitude. And that attitude is betraying him at the worst possible moment. Because beyond the boos, the gestures, and the provocations, what truly weighs on Vinicius this season is that he's no longer decisive. The stats are still there, yes, 20 goals and 14 assists, but cold numbers don't explain the void he leaves on the pitch. Because when Madrid needs him most, he doesn't show up. Against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League round of 16, he disappeared. He missed a penalty that could have changed the game. Against Arsenal in the first leg of the semi-finals, he played what was probably the worst match of his career. 37 touches, 18 lost balls, 1 duel 1 out of 6, 0 dribbles, 0 shots on target, 0 impact, 0 leadership. In the Copa del Rey final against Barca, yes, he had moments, but nothing decisive. He wasn't the same Vinicius who had humiliated Barca with a hat-trick in last year's Supercopa. He wasn't that player who carried the team on his back. He was just a reflection, a shadow. More and more sectors of the Madrid fan base, and even inside the club, no longer hide their frustration and fatigue with the player. For years, his attitude toward fans, his emotional reactions, and controversial behaviour were all forgiven because of his incredible talent. As long as Vinicius scored goals, destroyed defenders, and decided big games, everything was justified. But now that margin of forgiveness is running out. Vinicius is starting to get booed at the Santiago Bernabeu. Yes, the stadium that once gave him standing ovations is now showing signs of exhaustion, because fans don't only care about goals, they also care about effort, commitment, and humility. And this season, Vinicius has lost his connection with Madridismo, neither through his football nor his attitude. He's been under the microscope since the beginning. Criticism, insults, racism, pressure. He's faced it all. But the problem isn't just external. His constant disrespect to rivals, to fans, to referees. His outbursts on the pitch, his endless complaints, his victim-driven interviews. All of that has slowly worn down even his most loyal supporters. Inside the club, not everyone backs him like they used to. His football no longer hides the conflicts. His attitude is no longer tolerated. His commitment to the team is now in question. And today, many people at Valdebebas whisper something that once couldn't be said. Success has gone to his head. And all of this became worse after he didn't win the Ballon d'Or. That moment was a turning point, from being on top of the world to losing focus. He seemed to forget the most important thing, performing on the pitch. His response has been weak, inconsistent. Against Valencia, when the team was playing for the league title, he went missing again, and the crowd noticed, and they let him know. At Real Madrid, effort is non-negotiable, quality is a blessing, but commitment is a requirement. And if there's one thing Madrid has, it's history. Di Stefano, Cristiano, Zidane, all of them left, and the club kept winning. Vinicius must understand. Real Madrid is bigger than any player, and if he doesn't want to give his best, someone else will. Many are now saying it without fear. Madrid plays better without Vinicius. There's more order, fewer distractions, and from the club's leadership, drastic decisions are not off the table. Because at Madrid, no one is above the badge. Many of these criticisms are not exaggerations. They come with reason. It's not just about stats anymore. It's about what's happening on the field. Vinicius, once an unstoppable storm, now looks like a weak breeze. That winger who tore apart defences with unpredictable dribbles is no longer there. His football, once electric, now feels predictable. Restrained, less dangerous. The match against Arsenal was the breaking point, but the signs had been there for a while. That image was so painful that many began to ask, what happened to Vinicius? Because the numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the full story either. As of May 2025, Vinny has 20 goals and 14 assists in 49 matches for Real Madrid. A respectable record, yes, but not up to the standard he set in 2024. His average of 0.83 goal contributions per 90 minutes is lower than last season's 0.87 when he was seen as a Ballon d'Or favourite. Now, even those numbers have lost their shine in the face of what we see on the pitch. And of course, not everything comes down to his mindset. There's also a clear tactical challenge. Real Madrid no plays the same way anymore. The arrival of Mbappe, on paper, a move that promised a historic frontline, has created more complications than solutions. Vinicius, who was used to owning the entire left wing, now has to share space, rotate more, and adapt to a system that still hasn't found its balance. Opponents know this. They study him. They close him down. Now he faces double marking, constant physical pressure, and systems designed to shut down the spaces he once thrived in. Without the freedom to run, without fluidity in attack, Vinicius gets frustrated. And when he's frustrated, his football suffers. And when Real Madrid needed a statement of strength, what it found was discouragement. The team seems to have lost its hunger. You can see it in the attitude, in the body language, in the way they approach matches. And part of that lack of fire starts from the bench. Carlo Ancelotti, the same man who once led them to the top, is now sending signals of goodbye. Everyone's talking about his likely move to coach the Brazilian national team. And whether we like it or not, that affects the team. Because at a club like Madrid, if the leader doesn't have both feet in the fight, the whole squad starts to lose direction. Even though the league is still mathematically possible, the feeling inside the locker room is that focus has slipped away. The Champions League elimination against Arsenal and the Copa del Rey loss to Barcelona left open wounds, and so far no one has been able to heal them. And in the middle of all that chaos, one name remains at the centre of the storm: Vinicius Jr. The strange part, Vinny hasn't said a word. No public statements, no attempts to calm things down. But if he's shown one thing throughout his career, it's that he doesn't need to speak to endure. Since arriving in Madrid in 2018, he's ridden an emotional roller coaster, criticised for missing goals, for his playing style, for his decisions on the pitch, and still he always responded. Last season was proof of that. He dominated Europe, scored in the Champions League final, and secured his place among the best in the world. Today, though, the story is different. Vinicius trains hard, pushes himself, leans on his inner circle. But the pressure at Real Madrid is unlike anything else. Here, trying isn't enough. Here, if you don't deliver, you get booed. The fan base is split. Some ask for patience and remember his greatness, while others can't tolerate his attitude or his fading performances. Football is about the present. What you did yesterday fades fast. But Vinny still has time. He's only 24. What he doesn't lack is opportunity. Opportunity to reinvent himself, to bounce back like he's done before. The key will be finding tactical adjustments, yes, but also emotional ones. He needs to regain confidence in his dribbling, make better final decisions, and most of all, learn to live with the constant man-marking that follows him every match. Off the pitch, things aren't easier. Social media paints him as either a hero or a villain in seconds. Every gesture, every tweet, every reply sparks thousands of reactions. The City banner, after the Ballon d'Or, was just one example of how the outside world has become part of the game. And there's no escape, because then there's the national team. Brazil needs him, and he knows it. The 2026 World Cup is getting closer, and like it or not, Vinicius will be the face of the Seleção. So the 2024/25 season is more than just a slump. It's a turning point in his career. The moment of truth. The moment we'll see what Vinicius Jr is really made of. And as if the pressure from poor performances and constant media criticism weren't enough, now Vinicius Jr.'s future is also uncertain. What seemed unthinkable a year ago, questioning his place at Real Madrid, is now a real conversation happening inside Valdebebas. And at the negotiating table with his agents, Vinicius has always said he wants to stay, that Madrid is his home and he wants to make history wearing white. But his agents have bigger plans. They're using the massive offer from Saudi Arabia, €1 billion, over 5 seasons, as leverage to make Vinny the highest paid player on the team, even above Mbappe. That's the silent battle happening off the pitch. And yes, while the Brazilian has so far turned down that impossible-to-refuse offer, the proposal has created doubts. Because staying at Madrid comes with a price, and Vinicius has made his demand clear. He wants €25 to €30 million net per season. That's a number the club considers excessive, especially now when his form doesn't back it up. Real Madrid would offer, at most, €20 million. Not bad, but not what he's asking for. And this is where everything seems to fall apart. Because at this crossroads, Vinny isn't just fighting for a new contract. He's fighting for his place, for his legacy, for the credibility that now wobbles after a dull season, a painful Champions League exit, and a Copa del Rey title lost to the eternal rival. Vinicius hasn't been the player everyone expected, and at Real Madrid, when performance drops, the club doesn't hesitate to make bold decisions. It happened to Sergio Ramos, it happened to Cristiano Ronaldo. When there were doubts, they simply didn't get renewed and were let go without hard feelings. Florentino doesn't give in, he never has, he won't start now. But context matters. Despite the ups and downs, Vinicius has been the face of the team in the last 2 Champions League triumphs. The most dangerous player, the one who carried the white flag when the path was toughest. That's why the club still has faith. They still believe Vinny can recover his level, but it doesn't erase the feeling that, for the first time, his future is not a guarantee. The elimination against Arsenal devastated him. He hit rock bottom, and now he knows if he wants to stay, he must rebuild. He must become again that player who could flip impossible matches, who stood tall in finals and made the difference, who made people forget whoever came before him. The desire is there, the story is still alive, but the margin for error is getting smaller. And now comes another monumental dilemma, the one everyone at Madrid tries to hide but can no longer ignore, the coexistence of Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. The duo that promised to dominate Europe, the partnership meant to define an era, is now facing an identity crisis. Because neither Kylian nor Vinny are delivering as expected. And worse, it's unclear who's in charge. Mbappe has shown leadership, taken responsibility, scored decisive goals, and kept his cool even when the team struggled. Vinicius, on the other hand, remains trapped in the same controversies, fighting with the crowd, the opponents, the referees. At Real Madrid, hierarchy is sacred. In the Cristiano era, everyone played for him. When he left, the system was built around Benzema. And now, who's the centre of this galaxy? Mbappe or Vinicius? It can't be both. Not in a team that needs a single voice to lead, a reference point to handle the pressure, the spotlight and the badge. The problem is, no one says it out loud. On social media, everything looks perfect. Smiles, hugs, likes. But on the pitch, it's different. You see disorder, discomfort, doubt. They don't need to be best friends. They don't need to love each other, but they do need to perform, focus, lock in. Vinicius has to get back to doing what made him a star, breaking defences, and Mbappe must focus on what he does best, attacking space, killing in transition, deciding matches. Both can coexist. Both can be deadly, but it takes more than talent. It takes humility. It takes leadership. It takes vision. And maybe it also takes cleaning out the locker room, because that's how Madrid has always worked. Winning projects are built with sacrifices. And in this case, someone will have to give. Someone will have to go. Real Madrid needs a new structure, a new plan. Maybe Galactico, maybe not, but functional. And above all, a winning one. So what should Real Madrid do? Who stays? Who goes? Because one thing is clear, this team needs surgical restructuring. There's no room for sentiment. Being useful in the past is no longer enough. They need performance, vision, commitment, hunger. The first name on the exit list is clear, Jesus Vallejo. Even in a season with a shortage of centre-backs, he didn't play. an inevitable cut. Then there's Lucas Vazquez. Reliable, yes, but with Dani Carvajal and now Alexander-Arnold, there's no room. On the left side, Fran Garcia has shown he deserves a place, but Ferland Mendy, with his injury record and inconsistency, should already be packing. In midfield, things get complicated. Tchouaméni hasn't been the dominant pivot he was expected to be, but in his natural role, he can still deliver. However, if a 70 to 80 million euro offer arrives, it'll be hard to say no. Valverde, on the other hand, is untouchable. He's heart, legs, the crest itself. He doesn't move. Dani Ceballos has been useful, but could give way if a more creative signing comes. Madrid needs a cerebral partner for Jude, and Dani hasn't always been that. Arda Güler is at a crossroads. Every time he plays, he shines, but he barely plays. If he stays and gets minutes, he could explode. If not, he's a candidate for a big money sale. Brahim Diaz has done well, but doesn't change games. If space needs to be made, he could also go. And in the attack comes the hardest decision: Mbappe, Vinicius, and Rodrigo. Of the three, Rodrigo is the most expendable. He hasn't stepped up in the second half of the season. In the Premier League or Serie A, he could be a star. But in this Galactico Madrid, he feels out of place. And it seems his time at the Bernabeu is coming to an end. Mbappe and Vinicius must stay. But Real Madrid needs a coach who knows how to use them. Someone who can build a system to enhance their strengths and reduce the friction. Because if that synergy isn't found, one of them will end up crushed by the pressure. This is Madrid's turning point. It's not enough to have the best. You have to know how to organise them, because Galacticos only succeed when there's structure. And Vinicius has one last chance to reinvent himself, to grow up, to become the leader he claims to be, or be eclipsed by the new white era. And yes, many criticise him, many want him gone. But let's focus on the facts. In the last 4 seasons, there's only one player with more than 40 goals in the Champions League. And his name is Vinicius Jr. Not Haaland, not Mbappe, not Messi or Cristiano. It's the Brazilian so many are ready to give up on. Vinicius has 45 Champions League goals. 45. And you don't reach that number unless you're an extraordinary player. That's why it's almost impossible for him to leave Real Madrid. Because deep down, everyone knows who he is. When he's at 100%, he's unstoppable. When he focuses on the ball instead of the drama, on the dribbles instead of the gestures, he can be the best in the world. He still has time to win the Ballon d'Or. He can still define an era, but he has to choose: keep fighting the world or fight for his place in football history. Because the talent is already there. What he needs now is focus. And if he finds it, Vinicius Jr could not only become a Real Madrid legend, but one of the greatest footballers this sport has ever seen.